And video games are a real problem. They're a real problem. You know why? Because they're fucking fun.
Addictive.
And you don't. Yeah. Well, I have a real problem with them. And you do them, and they're real exciting, but you don't get anywhere.
Right.
It's like you could do like martial arts, right? You could learn jiu-jitsu. You get obsessed by jiu-jitsu, and then 3 years later, you're like an elite jiu-jitsu athlete. You're entering in competitions. You're a purple belt.
You're moving up.
Yeah, you're doing well. Right. You're thinking like, I might be able to open my own school one day.
You got confidence.
Yeah, if I have 100 students and those 100 students are paying me X amount of dollars per month, I can make a living. Holy shit, I can have this would be amazing. And then you see your jiu-jitsu school, and your jiu-jitsu instructor has all these students and drives a Mercedes, and he's got a nice family, and like, that's the future. This way you're doing something exciting and fun, and you don't. Or you could just be playing fucking video games. 3 years later, you could be that same kid just playing video games, waiting for the next whatever the fuck game is, next Xbox game to come out, and you're gonna waste your time.
What he's saying seems fine, and I'm interested to hear what you guys say, and I want to hear what chat has to say, Twitch chat. But he's basically just saying that he's saying to me what is a really lukewarm take. If you spend your life doing nothing but playing video games, and that leads to nothing, and you spin your wheels all day, you will amount to less or nothing or little. And I think that if you substituted video games for another endeavor, he would say the same thing. For example, if you spend your life reading cheaply produced paperback novels. I've read my fair share of trash. I mean, some of it's behind me right now. Okay, I'll read trash, but like if you spent your life reading that and did nothing else, and that was your main endeavor, and you never went outside, so to speak, I think he would say the same thing. Yeah, so I'm kind of like waiting to hear like why this is such a bad take.
So I don't actually think it's like the world's most terrible take or something. I just think it's just like, I agree. It's just like, listen, if you're gonna do one thing and nothing else, I've always said like, yeah, listen, I love playing video games. I play a lot of video games, and I really like the medium as like an artistic form or whatever. But like, I can only appreciate it for that because I read books and watch movies and consume other forms of art so that I can think about it differently, right? Like, if you only play video games or only watch movies or only read books or hell, only practice jiu-jitsu, your life would be more empty for it. You know what I mean?
Yes. And the one thing I'll say to that is I agree with what you said. However, I think we have to make the distinction that he's also making the point that if all you did was do jiu-jitsu, that you would probably be like intellectually and culturally a little bit of a desert, but it would lead to sort of like tangible opportunities in real life, like, money, career, and that kind of thing, which from what I understand from Rogan, and again, I'm a new guy to this world, he seems to really value a lot of endeavors that propel you towards that tangible sort of like, I'm going to call it the real world success. Jordan, 4 of those, says, I don't think Joe's really educated on gaming culture. I think that's why he said what he said. So I definitely disagree. I did, in addition to watching one podcast, I did go back and watch some of his other statements on gaming. I actually think the opposite. I think that he actually kind of gets it. Like, he was apparently addicted to like GTA 3. He was playing. He's been playing online since like 1998. I have seen multiple instances where he defends esports, that is making a living off competitive gaming, to his guests, and he educates them. I actually think, especially given his age, he really gets it.
We've literally used clips of him interviewing gaming and esports people in our shows. Like, and we've put in sound ups of him talking to people in our shows. Like, I don't like the guy personally, but I do think he like plays video games and understands playing video games. I think his like concern there is like having an addiction to something is bad. I would argue that like also only doing jiu-jitsu is like, you're not going to have much in your life. I guess maybe you could enter competitions, but like probably not. Honestly. Like, the same way that like if I only played games and like if I only played League for 3 years and went Challenger, just the law of large numbers, I probably wouldn't get into an LCS team,
But my
issue with this, and you guys mentioned it with the jiu-jitsu thing, is just that comparison, right? Because of course you can practice jiu-jitsu for years and you can get better at it and you can learn new skills and you can better yourself as a person, and maybe you get all the way to earning yourself a black belt, and then you start thinking about opening up a school, right? Because preferably that's where you should be. You should be at an expert level before you decide to open up a school and start training other people, because it's dangerous otherwise. But also, you could do none of those things. You could practice jiu-jitsu for 10 years and still be a fucking white belt. Like, the amount of time you put into something does not equate your progression up the ladder when it comes to jiu-jitsu. And that was my issue with the comparison, is that, like, yeah, like, I can fuck around in jiu-jitsu and stay at a white belt level for years. And so I'm just like, you can do the same thing with video games, but also, like we see all the time for esports, right? You can put in the time and effort into an esports scene and hopefully make your way up to a semi-pro or a pro level.
Saw the most recent clip going on about Joe Rogan, his comment about video games or like gamers. And I think where he was coming from, or what he was talking about specifically, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what I watched the whole thing and tried to get context of it. I watched, before and after the clip that was just, being posted on or on Twitter. It sounds like he's talking about like the top 1%, like the very odd or one-off chance that you're going to be a professional player, an esports player, and a successful one at that, right? I mean, you can be a professional esports player and, be on like a tier 2, tier 3 org, which is not maybe paying you the most. And obviously if you're not winning and being paid a lot, you're not a big streamer, then you're not really making a lot of money. So I'm assuming he's just basically talking about, the top 1%, you're winning every tournament, you're on a top organization, you're making a shitload of money, you're successful. And I mean, he talks about how, gaming can potentially not really get you anywhere, right? You're putting a lot of time into it and you're just mindlessly playing video games. I just don't think what Joe doesn't really understand in the full context of what the gaming community is and how many different avenues you can be successful in gaming. I mean, there's streaming, just content creation, YouTube, being a professional player, being a freaking coach. I mean, like, you don't you can be incredibly understanding of a game, but not have the physical capacity to be able to, get pentakills every single round and, every single game. But that doesn't mean that, there's not a job for you, right? That doesn't mean there's not a place for you in the gaming community where you can be successful. Especially when, coaches are being valued more and more in the gaming community now, which is a beautiful thing to see because coaches have been in sports forever. So, I mean, I'd love to go on and talk about it more, but I think that if you guys are in the gaming scene, we all know there are so many different ways you can be successful. There's so many different ways that you can make a living out of it.
I don't disagree with anything Ninja said, but I don't think and I know he said he took pains to watch all the context around it, which I really appreciate him saying that, because it means other people will understand that that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But I don't think his video addressed what Joe Rogan's saying at all.
Yeah.
Basically Ninja was just like, yeah, there's lots of it's an emerging field and there's a diverse amount of jobs. It's very difficult, but we're getting there. It's like, yeah, okay, that's not what he's talking about.
The people who are to make the two things link, right? Which just like Joe Rogan saying people are addicted to video games, that's bad for you because you get nothing out of it. If I'm addicted to video games, I'm not becoming a caster because I have to work on my ability to cast things. Like, that's a separate thing. If I do nothing but play video games or whatever.
You completely
it's like people are saying in the chat,
yeah.
Playing Assassin's Creed, like, you don't become a content creator because you play Assassin's Creed. No, there's like you said, there's this very fucking crucial step there where you're like, I need skills like video editing and VO and script writing.
And I kind of extrapolated the point a little bit because I watched some of the podcasts as well, and I also have context of like Joe Rogan's opinions on most things. Like, I've watched Jerry enough, I've listened to it enough to, I think, have an understanding of like what this guy's about to an extent.
Okay.
And I think first and foremost, I think that his comparison, it has a lot to do with what he sees as like getting something out of a hobby. So when he's talking about jiu-jitsu, and this kind of goes back to Devin's point, where Devin's saying like you could do jiu-jitsu for 2 hours a day, 4 times a week, and never become great if you don't try. But
if you do jiu-jitsu 2 hours a week or 2 hours a day, 4 times a week, you're definitely getting in better shape. Like you can't really avoid that if you're doing
true.
physical activity for an extra 10 hours a week. It's gonna impact your health, which might impact your mental health if you're in better shape. Maybe that benefits the rest of your life, your social life. Maybe it helps you in a job interview because you look better in your clothes. And this isn't like actually something I think Joe Rogan is a big proponent of, is like how like he it's almost like a value proposition when he's talking about something like jiu-jitsu versus video games, where if I do a ton of jiu-jitsu but I never make it, I'll have all of these sort of ancillary benefits that come with that. This is kind of like what makes my brain go fucking numb every time I watch Joe Rogan, is he really, really does see the world in this very sort of like mathematical, finite way, where there's like only one optimal way to be and live. Like everybody knows he loves fucking fitness. He loves like, hand-to-hand combat. He loves, like stand-up comedy, this insanely like alpha jobs and hobbies where like you're the center of the attention, you're building your body, or you're growing your personality. And I think like he's just basically missed the boat entirely about what it's like to be energized by a community, by a new game, by making friends online, by having something that you belong to and you feel associated with. And obviously that could be true about any fucking hobby that you choose, but the assertion that somehow doing jiu-jitsu every day is more valuable to you than doing video games every day just because like it fits a certain lifestyle that he has determined is optimal, I think is insane, and is really, in my opinion, one of my biggest criticisms of his interviews in general, is that he wants everything to fit into this box of like the perfect person, and that's just not how life works. Nothing fucking works that way.
What you're saying about he has this certain view of life and it's like very rigid, is like, it's not that I disagree with that. I think you just have to be correct, basically. But I wonder why people get so upset about that. Because it's like, as long as you understand that, in this case, Joe Rogan thinks a certain way about life and wants to advocate the pursuit of success in life a certain way, what is wrong with him advocating that? It's almost a reading of life, like from a certain perspective. Like if you ever read like a feminist reading of a famous book or a socialist reading of a famous book, you're reading with the understanding that this individual has a set of principles that are guiding their interpretation of the work, just like Joe Rogan's principles guide his interpretation of life. So when you have that understanding, you come in and you go, okay, well, Joe Rogan says that I should do jiu-jitsu and open up a school or whatever. You're kind of like, well, there's some cracks in your argument, my dude. But I get it and I appreciate it. And you know what? I actually might just take a bit of that grain of what you just planted, a bit of yours, and I'll mix it into mine. And I'm gonna take,
Colin, may I swing in now and offer my hottest of hot takes?
Swing away.
I entirely agree with you that, like, for the folks in the chat who are being like, just because he says it doesn't mean it's not wrong. It's like, yeah, I mean, listen, he has a criticism of playing video games, and like I think Colin's 100% right that it's like it's about the perspective you come from, and it's a school of thought or whatever. Here is my hottest ass take.
Okay.
I think Joe Rogan fucking sucks, and I don't think that we should all be caring about what he thinks about video games.
Yeah.
I don't think we should care at fucking all what he thinks about pretty much anything. Why? How does this dude become the fucking intelligentsia, the dude that everyone looks to, the fucking brain hive mind Illuminati, for a fucking legion of people that we all have to care about when he says something about anything? I don't like this guy, but even if I did, what has he done? What has he contributed to the world to make him this dude that we all shut up and pay attention to whenever he has a take? Like, I don't care about what like Joe Rogan has to say about video games, because he doesn't have like he's not a man with like a body of criticism on these topics. I probably care about what he has to say about like mixed martial arts, because he is like clearly an expert in the field, you know what I mean? Like, and I believe that his opinion is like comes from like a reasonable place and is justified. I don't care about mixed martial arts really, so I'm not going to be great at like engaging in that conversation. But if he said something like that, if he had a take about that, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, sure, makes sense. But a take about this, I'm like, I don't know, dude, this just isn't the space where I care about listening to you.
Anyone who has a platform that brings other people on, you know, it often starts with like, this is an interview show, it's about the guest. But of course, just with the march of time and doing hundreds of episodes, right? Like over 1,000 episodes, he becomes a distinct, coherent voice of his own. People become attached to him. So I think it's like pretty natural that people care what he thinks, like given the platform. But when you dissect it, it makes about as much sense as listening to most people about most things make, which is just like, take it or leave it.
I think, to your point, Dan, what Joe Rogan has done to make him so popular is become a pundit about how people should live their lives. Like, I know that that's a disgusting thing to think about. And
sucks.
if you don't like Joe Rogan, I don't like Joe Rogan either. I appreciate some of the value that he has, but I am not a massive fan of like the fence walking on every issue.
Yeah.
That being said, like he certainly has established himself as like, I'm not a pundit. I'm not an MMA guy. I'm not a comedian guy. I'm actually just a guy who talks about how people should live. But I don't have any. I don't have any real opinions on either side, except for these very, very stringent guidelines about things like diet, exercise, and like passion. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's why he's so successful. That's why everybody and their mother listens to Joe Rogan Experience, because he doesn't talk about anything specific. He just talks about how you should live. And if there's anything we know about YouTube and Spotify and famous people, it's that people love it when they get to see a lifestyle that, you know, maybe they don't have yet and they aspire towards. You know, like that's like, why do people watch streamers? It's because in a lot of cases they just wish they were that good and had that set up and, you know, lived in wherever in a mansion and shit like that, right? It's really easy to try to live through people vicariously on the internet, and Joe Rogan gives that to every fucking person, because the only thing he talks about is like, how should you live?
I don't think it's crazy to listen. Like, when I say listen to, I literally mean listen to, not take orders from. There is a difference. I do not think it is crazy to listen to a individual who has some life experience and who's gone through some interesting things and interesting times, and take what you want and sort of listen with an open ear to that. What I don't understand, and this is not a Joe Rogan issue, this is not a video games issue, this is just like a person, people, internet, pre-internet, whatever issue. What I don't understand is the defensive nature of so many individuals who, anytime something that they interact with is criticized, they can never critically think about it. They seem unable. It's the worst take ever. Terrible. It's bad. Fuck Joe Rogan. And it's like, you know what? Maybe shut the fuck up for a second. Maybe turn your brain on, turn the reaction off, watch the podcast. Maybe you'll come away and think this is the worst take ever. That's fine too. That's absolutely fine. But like, critically evaluate what people are saying. Decide if for you there is value, even a kernel of value. Take that value, right? Just because you read fucking Marcus Aurelius doesn't mean you have to do everything that fucking dead old Roman dude said. It means that he said a few wise words here and there, right? Probably more than a few, and you can take them and apply them to your own life. Is Joe Rogan Marcus Aurelius?
Absolutely fucking not.
And I dearly hope he doesn't become it. But do you take my point about absorbing, not being defensive, taking what's valuable from people who are valuable people? Joe Rogan has more life experience than I do. He has done some things that I've never done. I'd like to hear about those things.
I believe I'm using this word correctly. Just on like the historical meaning of this word, not the modern meaning of the word. But there is a partisanism over things you like becoming things you identify with. And liking video games becomes an identity when liking video games was never an identity. Liking video games was never who you are as a person. Liking Joe Rogan shouldn't be who you are as a person either. Let me be clear. And there's a lot of people out there who treat it like it's a personality. Liking video games, liking Joe Rogan, liking Marcus Aurelius, you know what I mean? Liking Star Wars, liking anything, that's not a personality, right? No. Personality is what informs what you like about those things.
I think there are a couple of things going on. One is I think they're addictive.
Oh yeah,
And I've seen that with my own eyes with my children. They're addictive, and when you take the game away, they exhibit withdrawal. They freak the fuck out.
Come on, Dad.
Yeah.
One more game.
Yeah, they
Jesus,
get crazy.
Dad.
They stomp the ground.
Fuck.
I know.
Yeah.
And then also, I think when you play video games, you can get so addicted that you will isolate, and you'll play those games all day.
Oh, there's a
What's
lot
that-
of kids doing that.
Yeah, what's that do to your social interaction? What's that do to your body? Should you be doing a sport? What's that do to you later on? Can you get a girl when you've been sitting in front of it? There are lots of things that we don't know. I mean, do they lend? Do video games, when you play them on that level, do they retard your social skills and your, I mean, there's a lot of considerations. I don't think.
Well, I'm also in favor of you doing anything you want. If there's certain people that would make the same argument about someone who's addicted to reading.
Sure.
There's a lot of people that are in their head just reading novels.
Then they
all
were.
day. Yeah.
But those arguments were used
yeah.
against before video games.
You just don't hear it anymore because you just hear the more accelerated version. What it is basically an engaging human creation.
Yeah.
An engaging human creation that's designed to captivate your attention, whether it's a novel or a film or anything.
Yeah.
Like things are designed. That's what art is in a lot of ways. When you go to an art gallery and you stare at someone's work, it's like some human creation that captivates your attention and gets you locked in.
I thought that was really interesting because this guy that he has on, this other comedian, is saying the very boomerish things like, this
That's
shit
just
we've all
kids
just like,
stomping or whatever. Yeah,
it's like the other stuff. It was like, can you get a girl? Like, is it bad for your body? It's like
people.
It's like, shut the fuck up. But and then Rogan's like says the exact same thing that we said earlier.
Yeah, it's just art.
Like, well, the book reading comparison is great because if you guys know your history, then you know that when printing became cheap and books became widely available to the middle class, people were going fucking ape shit about books. There's a really famous German literary work called The Sorrows of Young Werther. And in it, this kid is obsessed with reading books and he ends up killing himself and some other stuff happens. And he spirals out of control. He goes off the wall because he just loves reading books. He's just a degenerate sicko who sits around reading books. And that's exactly, it's the same shit. A one-to-one parallel. It's the same shit.
Before books, it was like listening to music in the town square. After books, it was, like film and music. It became rock music. It was rap music. It was video games. It's just whatever the current medium du jour that is like, it's bad to do this thing because it's, it's art that we don't agree with or don't like, a medium that we don't appreciate or understand. It's very similar. And you're right. Like it probably even goes further back than like Sorrows of Young Brother with books, right? But like, I'm not sure. I'm sure it was cave paintings at one point. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure it was always whatever.
These kids discovered this new red pigment from deer's blood, and I swear to God, I can't get them out of the cave. They just keep putting their hands up and drawing around it. It's just, it's awful.
At some point, it was
right? No one in history is ever going to look at Ooga Booga's hand drawing and say that's amazing. I fear for the human race. They're not learning hunter-gatherer skills. It's just it's really sad.
It's the same shit. It's the same shit
Devin's
every
in
single
fucking
time.
full
And it's just
manic mode.
And I appreciate that what Joe Rogan says there. Like I'm loath to agree to him or whatever. Like the thing he said there, which it's a piece of art that is engaging. I think is interesting. But then he kind of slips into the almost too engaging. Like he then engages just sort of like weird conspiratorial. Well, maybe it's too much though.
I think Colin has the Ooga Booga thing under wrap. The thing about like these people just need to spend more time with their hunter gathering skills. Like it's just every 10 years there's gonna be a new fucking pundit who sits in front of everyone and is like, you know what? All these people, they're fucking focused on William Burroughs and Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, and they should be working on their education and engineering. Like, this is just unacceptable. And like what you're saying in the chat with the social media thing, there's always going to be some new thing that people are objectively spending too much time on, but also are being creative on. And some guy is going to be sitting there like, well, you really should be learning how to build houses and having a balanced meal 3 times a day. Like, fuck off. Yeah, so there's a couple things. First of all, I want to commend chat for basically solving a dispute with themselves and apologizing for the first time ever on the internet.
Good job, chat.
For the first time ever on the internet, 2 people disagreed about something controversial and came to a resolution and apologized, which is incredible. First time ever online in Score Esports Twitch chat.
Love it.
So that's a good thing to celebrate.
We must all, in our daily lives, live up to the age-old faith that peace and freedom walk together.